There is one relationship on this planet that has never needed a single word to survive 15,000 years. Not a contract, not a promise, not a shared language. Just proximity, trust, and time. Scientists once put a device on dogs that measured heart rate the instant an owner walked into a room. It didn't matter if the owner had been gone 5 minutes or Spike was the same. Not attention-seeking, not habit. A nervous system responding to a bond it cannot explain and does not need to. Today, 100 facts about the animal that has slept beside humans since before we had cities, before we had writing, before we had the wheel. An animal we have shaped more than any other living creature, and one that, after all this time, still keeps a few secrets from us. Block 1, Biology. Fact 1. A dog's brain devotes roughly 40 times more space to processing smell than a human brain does, even though the overall brain is much smaller. It isn't just a stronger sense. It's a different sense entirely, built around a kind of information humans barely register. Where we walk into a kitchen and smell dinner. A dog's brain is busy pulling that single impression apart into a dozen separate ingredients, each one tagged, filed, and compared against memory in real time. Fact 2. Puppies are born blind, deaf, and almost entirely dependent, using only smell and touch to find their mother in the first days of life. Their eyes and ear canals stay sealed for roughly 2 weeks. The nose comes online before anything else does. Fact 3. A dog's whiskers, technically called vibrissae, are rooted 3 times deeper into the skin than the surrounding fur and are directly wired to the nervous system. They can detect subtle changes in air currents, which is part of how a dog senses an object or a person approaching in the dark before it can see them at all. It's essentially a second radar system running quietly alongside sight and smell, one that keeps working even when a room is pitch black or a hallway is too narrow to see around the corner of. Fact 4. Dogs can rotate their ears using a set of muscles humans no longer have functional control over. Some breeds can move each ear independently to triangulate a sound's exact origin within a fraction of a second, faster than most security systems can react to a noise. Fact 5. A dog's sense of time is partly chemical. Researchers studying scent decay found that dogs can distinguish between a scent trail an hour old and one a day old, essentially reading a timestamp that humans cannot perceive at all. To a dog, a room isn't just a space. It's a layered archive of everyone who passed through it and roughly when, stacked on top of each other like invisible sticky notes. Fact 6. The structure of a dog's eye contains far more rod cells than a human eye, which is why dogs see motion in near darkness that a human would miss completely. The trade-off is that fine detail and certain colors are harder for them to resolve, especially in bright light. Fact 7. Dogs are not colorblind, but their color world is closer to a human with red-green color blindness. Blues and yellows stand out vividly. Reds appear muted, closer to brown or gray, which is why a bright red toy on green grass can be almost invisible to a dog relying on color alone. It's a useful thing to know if you've ever wondered why your dog seemed to walk right past a toy that was, to your eyes, sitting in plain sight the entire time. Fact 8. A dog's normal resting heart rate is significantly faster than a human's, and in small breeds it can climb even higher during excitement, sometimes approaching double the resting rate of a large breed dog standing right next to it. Fact 9. Unlike humans, dogs cool themselves almost entirely through panting, since sweat glands exist only in their paw pads. On a hot day, a dog's breathing rate can increase more than tenfold compared to its resting rate, turning its tongue and airway into an evaporative cooling system. It's a much less efficient system than human sweating, and that gap is exactly why dogs overheat faster than people do, and why shade and water matter so much more for them on a hot afternoon than we tend to assume. Fact 10. Dogs lack a functional collarbone, and this isn't a design flaw. It allows their front legs a wider range of motion, contributing directly to the length of their stride and the height of their jump. Fact 11. A dog's skeleton contains more bones than a human skeleton, largely because of the number of small bones in the tail, which functions less like decoration and more like a rudder, a counterbalance, and a communication tool all at once. Watch a dog take a sharp turn at full speed, and the tail moves first, shifting the whole body's center of gravity a split second before the paws even change direction. Fact 12. Some breeds, like the Basset Hound, have skin that is deliberately loose around the face and neck. This isn't a cosmetic trait. Loose skin traps scent particles near the nose longer, and that's precisely why scent hound breeds were selected for exactly this feature over centuries of breeding. Fact 13. A dog's paw pads contain a fatty tissue layer that acts as insulation, letting dogs stand on cold or hot surfaces longer than a bare human foot could tolerate, though extreme surface temperatures can still injure them. Fact 14. Dogs are considered facultative carnivores, meaning their digestive system can process both meat and plant matter efficiently, unlike a strict carnivore like a cat. This flexibility is part of what allowed early dogs to thrive on the scraps of early human settlements, scavenging leftover grain, vegetables, and bone alike, at a time when a stricter carnivore simply couldn't have survived on that kind of inconsistent mixed diet. Fact 15. Tail position and movement function as a genuine language. A loose, sweeping wag near hip height usually signals ease. A high, stiff, fast wag often signals arousal or tension rather than joy. Reading a tail correctly means reading its height, speed, and stiffness together, not just whether it's moving. The body is only half the story. What's happening underneath it is where things get genuinely strange. Block 2. Emotions and behavior. Fact 16. Dogs experience measurable REM sleep, the same sleep phase in which humans dream. Brain activity during this phase closely resembles waking activity, and visible twitching, paw movement, and quiet vocalizing during sleep are considered strong behavioral evidence of dreaming. Fact 17. Smaller dog breeds tend to cycle through REM sleep more frequently than larger breeds, meaning a small dog may experience several short dream episodes in a single night, while a giant breed may only have one or two. Nobody knows for certain what a dog dreams about, but the timing lines up closely with recent activity, leading researchers to suspect dogs are, at least in part, replaying the day. Fact 18. The so-called guilty look, lowered head and ears, avoided eye contact, is now understood by researchers as a response to a person's tone and posture, not a sign of actual guilt. In controlled experiments, dogs displayed this exact posture whether or not they had actually done anything wrong, as long as the owner appeared upset. Fact 19. Dogs show measurable behavioral responses to human distress. In studies where a person pretended to cry, dogs approached more quickly and more gently than when the same person simply hummed or talked. This is treated by researchers as one of the clearest behavioral signs of canine empathy. Notably, the dogs didn't just approach. They slowed down, softened their posture, and often pressed their body gently against the person, a comfort-seeking behavior that looks remarkably similar to what a concerned friend might do. Fact 20. Jealousy-like behavior in dogs has been documented experimentally. When owners directed affection toward a realistic stuffed animal instead of a robotic dog, real dogs pushed between the owner and the object, nudged for attention, and in some cases showed clear signs of frustration, mirroring behavior seen in young children. Quick one for you. Does your dog get jealous of anything? Another pet, a phone, a new baby? Drop it in the comments. Fact 21. Dogs are capable of what looks like feigned behavior, not deception in the human sense, but learned patterns that produce a desired outcome. A limp that vanishes the moment no one is watching, or a sudden reluctance to walk that clears up once the destination changes, is simply operant learning at work. Fact 22. Dogs show a documented sensitivity to unequal treatment. In one well-known study design, two dogs performed the same trick side by side. The dog that stopped receiving a reward while the other kept getting one began refusing to perform, even though it had performed the trick correctly moments before. Some individuals in these studies went further, visibly turning away from the researcher entirely, a small but unmistakable protest. Fact 23. Dogs can detect the biochemical markers of human fear. Fear triggers a surge of stress hormones that changes a person's scent profile almost instantly, and a dog's nose is sensitive enough to register that shift, which is exactly why dogs seem to sense fear rather than simply see it. It's also one reason trainers warn against approaching an anxious dog while feeling nervous yourself. The dog isn't reading your face first, it's reading your chemistry. Fact 24. Because dogs don't consciously mask their body language the way humans learn to mask facial expressions, their posture is considered one of the most honest behavioral signals in the animal kingdom. A relaxed dog looks relaxed. A frightened dog looks frightened. There is very little performance involved. Fact 25. Dogs can experience a condition that closely resembles clinical depression in humans, often triggered by major disruptions like the loss of a companion, a house move, or a significant change in routine. Loss of appetite, reduced interest in play, and lethargy are common signs, and veterinary behaviorists treat it with strategies similar to those used for humans: structure, engagement, and in some cases medication. If dogs feel this much, the next question is obvious. How much of it are they actually telling us, and how much are we simply missing? Block 3. Communication with humans. Fact 26. The average trained dog understands somewhere between 150 and 200 human words and short phrases, but some individual dogs have shown vastly higher capacity. A border collie studied for years by cognitive researchers eventually demonstrated recognition of over 1,000 distinct object names, and could correctly interpret simple grammatical instructions involving those names, sorting toys into categories on command, and even inferring the name of a completely new object by process of elimination. A trick most toddlers can't reliably pull off. Fact 27. Brain imaging studies suggest dogs process the literal meaning of a word and the emotional tone of a voice in different regions of the brain, similar to the hemispheric split seen in humans. The friendliest reaction only appears when both the words and the tone match, meaning a harsh tone can undercut even a kind word. Fact 28. Dogs reliably follow human eye gaze and pointing gestures, an ability that even our closest primate relatives struggle to replicate consistently. Researchers view this as one of the clearest fingerprints of thousands of years of coevolution with humans. Fact 29. Mutual eye contact between a dog and its owner triggers a release of oxytocin, the same bonding hormone involved in the connection between a parent and infant in both species simultaneously. As far as researchers know, this specific two-way oxytocin loop through eye contact doesn't occur between humans and any other domesticated animal. Not cats, not horses, not any species we've studied closely. A dog holding your gaze across a room is, chemically speaking, doing the same thing a newborn does when it locks eyes with its mother. Fact 30. Dogs adjust their behavior depending on who they're interacting with, calmer with an anxious person, more playful with a confident one, gentler with a small child than with an adult stranger. This adaptive reading of individual humans happens continuously and largely without training. Fact 31. Dogs use their owner as what researchers call a secure base, the same attachment pattern seen in toddlers with their parents. In unfamiliar environments, dogs explore confidently while their owner is present, but exploration drops sharply and stress signals rise the moment the owner steps out of the room. The moment the owner returns, exploration resumes almost immediately, as if the room itself only became safe again the instant that one familiar person walked back in. Fact 32. When faced with an unsolvable task, dogs will typically try briefly and then turn to look at a nearby human, essentially asking for help. Wolves raised in comparable conditions tend to keep working the problem alone rather than seeking human assistance, a striking behavioral divergence that researchers link directly to domestication. It suggests something changed at a fairly deep level over thousands of years, not just tolerance for humans, but an actual expectation that we're worth asking for help. Fact 33. Many dogs appear to anticipate their owner's return before any obvious cue like a car door or footsteps. Leading theories point to a combination of learned routine, distant scent detection, and possibly a dog's ability to track how much a familiar scent in the house has faded since the person left, using that decay as a rough internal clock. Some owners swear their dog's internal alarm is accurate to within a couple of minutes, day after day, regardless of what time they actually leave for work. Second question, does your dog wait by the door before you even ring the bell? How many minutes early? Genuinely curious, write it down. Fact 34. Some dogs have been documented alerting owners to seizures minutes before they occur, sometimes as much as half an hour in advance. The exact mechanism isn't fully understood, but it's believed to involve subtle scent or behavioral changes that precede a seizure event. Fact 35. Dogs interpret human pointing gestures instinctively, even as very young puppies with minimal prior exposure to humans. A level of intuitive gesture reading that researchers have not been able to replicate in chimpanzees or bonobos without extensive training. Block 4. Instincts and abilities. Fact 36. Several studies have found that dogs show a preference for aligning their body along a north-south axis while relieving themselves, particularly under calm, stable geomagnetic conditions. Researchers aren't certain why, but the alignment has been documented across dozens of breeds. Fact 37. Dogs have been recorded finding their way home across enormous, unfamiliar distances after becoming lost. The leading explanation combines magnetic sensitivity, scent tracking, and spatial memory, though no single mechanism fully accounts for the more extreme documented cases. Fact 38. Herding behavior in breeds like the Border Collie emerges without any formal training. Puppies bred for herding will instinctively begin circling groups of animals and adjusting distance and pressure, a behavior pattern essentially preloaded by centuries of selective breeding rather than learned from scratch. Fact 39. Swimming ability varies enormously by breed. Waterbred retrievers often swim confidently the first time they enter water, while breeds with short muzzles and dense, barrel-shaped bodies like bulldogs and pugs tend to struggle and tire quickly, since their build was never selected for buoyancy or efficient paddling. Fact 40. Dogs appear able to distinguish between accidental and intentional actions. In an experiment where one person accidentally dropped food and another deliberately withheld it, dogs consistently approached the person who accidentally dropped it more readily, suggesting an ability to read intent, not just outcome. Fact 41. Puppies raised alongside an experienced, well-trained adult dog often pick up commands and routines far faster than puppies raised alone, a phenomenon attributed to observational learning, essentially learning by watching rather than by direct instruction. Trainers have long used this shortcut deliberately. Pairing a green puppy with a seasoned dog for a few weeks can shave real time off a training program. Fact 42. A dog's tracking ability isn't just about detecting a scent, it's about detecting how a scent changes over time. A trail an hour old carries a different chemical signature than one a day old, allowing a trained tracking dog to estimate not just direction but timing. Fact 43. Dogs show a basic sensitivity to small quantities. In experiments using a hidden object method, where objects are hidden and then revealed in an unexpected quantity, dogs consistently stare longer at outcomes that don't match what they should logically expect, a behavioral signature associated with basic numerical awareness in several species. None of this happened overnight. It took thousands of years to build a species this fluent in us. Block 5. History and origins. Fact 44. Dogs are believed to be the only animal domesticated by humans before the rise of agriculture. Every other major domesticated species, cattle, goats, pigs, horses, came after humans had already settled into farming communities. The dog arrived while we were still hunter-gatherers, long before permanent homes, stored grain, or fenced land existed to make the relationship convenient. Whatever drew that first wolf and that first human close enough to trust each other, it wasn't food surplus or comfort. It was something else entirely. Fact 45. The exact geographic origin of dog domestication is still debated among researchers, with genetic evidence pointing to possible independent domestication events in multiple regions of Eurasia around the same broad time period, rather than one single clean origin point. Fact 46. Every dog breed alive today, from the smallest toy breed to the largest mastiff, descends from a now extinct population of gray wolves. The split wasn't simply humans taming individual wolves. Most researchers now favor a model of self-selection, where wolves more tolerant of human proximity gained an advantage and gradually formed a distinct population. Fact 47. Ancient breeds considered genetically closest to early domesticated dogs include several Spitz-type and Sighthound-type breeds that have existed with relatively little modification for an extremely long time, while the vast majority of breeds recognized today were developed within roughly the last 2 to 3 centuries, meaning most of the breeds walking around dog parks today are, genetically speaking, closer to modern inventions than to ancient lineages. Fact 48. Genetic comparisons between dogs and wolves show dozens of specific genes tied to brain development and social behavior that changed during domestication. A shift researchers describe as dogs essentially evolving a biological toolkit, specifically for reading and cooperating with humans. Fact 49. One of the oldest known burials showing deliberate human-dog companionship dates back roughly 12,000 years, discovered in the Middle East, showing an elderly person buried with a hand resting on a young dog. Whoever arranged that burial decided the bond deserved to continue. Fact 50. In ancient Egypt, dogs held a genuinely sacred status. Deities associated with the afterlife were depicted with canine features, and the death of a family dog was mourned formally, sometimes with an entire household shaving their eyebrows as a visible sign of grief, with harming one treated as a serious offense under social and sometimes legal custom. Third question. If you'd lived in a culture that treated one dog breed as sacred, which breed would you have picked and why? Let me know below. Fact 51. In Japan, the story of a loyal Akita who continued visiting a train station daily for years after its owner's death became a national symbol of devotion, memorialized with statues that still stand as a cultural touchstone today. Fact 52. Dogs played a direct role in the early history of space exploration, with the Soviet space program sending dogs into orbit before any human had made the trip, an era of scientific history that quite literally could not have happened without them. Block 6. Records and the Extraordinary. Fact 53. The fastest dog breed can reach speeds that place it among the quickest land animals on Earth, trailing only the cheetah in outright sprint speed, despite the same breed being famous for sleeping the vast majority of the day away. It's a strange contradiction to watch in person. An animal capable of blistering speed, spending most of its waking hours draped across the nearest couch like it's never moved fast in its life. Fact 54. The record for smallest dog in documented history belongs to a Chihuahua measured at just a few inches tall at the shoulder, weighing under a kilogram as an adult, and still living a full, healthy life. Fact 55. On the opposite end, the tallest dogs on record, giant breeds like the Great Dane, can stand taller than an average adult human when rearing up on their hind legs, with a nose-to-tail length exceeding 2 meters in the largest documented individuals. Fact 56. The oldest reliably documented dog lived into their late 20s, roughly 3 times the average lifespan of a large breed dog, an outlier that highlights just how much variation exists in canine aging depending on breed, size, and care. Smaller breeds, as a rule, tend to live meaningfully longer than giant breeds, a pattern that runs opposite to what we see across most other mammal species, where bigger usually means longer-lived, not shorter. Fact 57. As a general rule, dogs with longer muzzles tend to live longer and breathe more easily than flat-faced breeds. Brachycephalic breeds face a well-documented set of chronic respiratory and cardiac issues, largely a side effect of selective breeding for a particular facial shape that humans found appealing. Fact 58. Dalmatian puppies are born completely white, with their signature spots developing gradually over the first several weeks of life, tied to a specific pattern in how pigmentation genes express themselves after birth. Fact 59. Documented cases exist of dogs performing what looks like genuine cross-species altruism, staying beside injured strangers, alerting people to danger, or attempting rescues, all without specific training, placing them among a very small group of animals known to show this kind of behavior toward other species, including humans. Most of these cases involve no reward, no training cue, and no obvious personal benefit to the dog, which is exactly why researchers take them seriously as genuine altruism rather than a conditioned response. Fact 60. Just as most humans favor one hand, most dogs show a preference for one paw, and it's roughly an even split between left and right-pawed dogs across the population. A simple way to spot it is watching which paw a dog leads with going downstairs or over a doorstep. Fact 61. A dog's nose stays moist for a functional reason. Moisture helps trap scent particles more effectively than a dry surface would. Dogs also frequently lick their own nose, which transfers scent molecules to a specialized organ in the roof of the mouth for a kind of secondary chemical analysis. Fact 62. Some research suggests dogs perceive older, lower refresh rate screens as flickering rather than smooth motion, which may partly explain why dogs historically showed less interest in television. Modern high refresh rate screens appear far more continuous to a dog's eyes, which lines up with anecdotal reports of dogs paying more attention to screens today than decades ago. Fact 63. Dogs can catch contagious yawns, and they do it more often from familiar, bonded humans than from strangers, a pattern researchers consider one of several small but meaningful signs of empathy across species lines. Fact 64. Estimates suggest the global dog population runs into the hundreds of millions, but only a fraction live as household pets. The majority are free-roaming, village, or community dogs living largely outside direct human ownership. A reminder that the cozy image of dog as pet is actually the minority global experience. Fact 65. Positive interaction between a dog and its owner reliably raises oxytocin levels in the dog's bloodstream, mirroring the exact hormonal signature seen in a parent bonding with an infant. From a strictly biochemical standpoint, what a dog feels toward its person really does map onto what we call love. Block 7. Breeds and diversity. Fact 66. Major kennel organizations worldwide collectively recognize several hundred distinct dog breeds, each one originally developed for a specific purpose: hunting, herding, guarding, retrieving, or simply companionship, and most of those breeds are far younger than people assume, developed within the last 2 or 3 centuries rather than over millennia. Breed clubs, standardized paperwork, and formal registries are largely a Victorian-era invention, meaning the tidy idea of a breed, as we know it, is much newer than the dogs themselves. Fact 67. Retriever breeds have topped popularity rankings in many countries for decades running, largely credited to a combination of trainability, low aggression, and a temperament that adapts well to families, working roles, and therapy settings alike. Fact 68. Herding breeds consistently top trainability rankings among working dog researchers, often learning new commands in a small handful of repetitions compared to dozens needed by an average breed. A gap wide enough that trainers specifically seek these breeds out for advanced obedience and service work. Fact 69. Sighthound breeds bred for chasing visible prey across open terrain are considered among the oldest relatively unchanged breed types still in existence, with genetic studies showing minimal divergence from very early domesticated dog populations compared to most modern breeds. Fact 70. A small number of breeds, most famously the Chow Chow, are born with tongues that darken from pink to a deep blue-black over the first couple months of life, caused by unusually high pigment concentration in the mucous membrane, a trait almost no other breed shares. Fact 71. A notable percentage of Dalmatians experience partial or complete hearing loss in one or both ears, a consequence linked to the same genetic pathway responsible for their distinctive spotted coat pattern, since pigment genes and inner ear development are more connected than most people realize. Fact 72. One breed, the Basenji, doesn't bark in the traditional sense due to a uniquely shaped larynx, instead producing a yodel-like sound. It's not a quiet breed by any means, just an unusually vocal one in a completely different register, and owners often describe the sound as somewhere between a yodel, a howl, and a rusty door hinge. Impossible to mistake once you've heard it. Fact 73. Sighthounds are the only dog type referenced by name in some translations of ancient religious texts, prized historically for grace and speed in a way that made them stand out even in cultures that rarely singled out individual animals by type. Fact 74. Certain northern breeds, most famously the Siberian Husky, commonly display heterochromia, one blue eye and one brown, a trait considered a normal breed standard variation rather than any kind of health concern. Fact 75. German Shepherds remain one of the most widely used breeds in police and military service worldwide, prized for a rare combination of scenting ability, trainability, physical drive, and temperament stability under pressure, with specialized working dogs sometimes commanding prices in the tens of thousands of dollars. Fact 76. The popular image of a Saint Bernard wearing a small barrel around its neck is almost entirely a myth, traced back to a famous 19th century painting rather than actual mountain rescue practice. The breed's real legacy is built on decades of genuine alpine rescue work, no barrel required. Fact 77. Hairless breeds developed in the Americas, most notably the Xoloitzcuintli, have been bred for thousands of years and were historically valued for their unusually warm skin, used both practically for warmth and symbolically in spiritual traditions tied to guidance and comfort. Beyond breed trivia, dogs have quietly reshaped entire fields of human medicine and research. Block 8. Dogs and Science. Fact 78. Some of the most foundational discoveries in behavioral science trace directly back to experiments involving dogs, most famously the discovery of conditioned reflexes, a finding that reshaped how scientists understand learning across essentially every species, humans included. Fact 79. Therapy dogs are used clinically for a wide range of conditions, including post-traumatic stress, autism spectrum support, and anxiety disorders. Interaction with a therapy dog has been shown in controlled settings to lower stress hormone levels while raising bonding hormones, producing measurable relief that in mild cases rivals other non-medical interventions. Hospitals and universities have expanded these programs specifically around exam periods and recovery wards. Because the effect shows up quickly and requires nothing from the patient except a few minutes of quiet attention. Fact 80. Multiple studies link regular interaction with a dog to measurably lower blood pressure, with some showing a noticeable drop within minutes of simply petting an unfamiliar, calm dog, and longer-term studies showing consistently lower baseline blood pressure among dog owners compared to non-owners of similar age and lifestyle. Fact 81. Large-scale population studies covering millions of people have found that dog ownership, particularly among people living alone, is associated with a meaningfully reduced risk of death from cardiovascular disease, likely tied to increased physical activity, reduced loneliness, and lower chronic stress. For a lot of people, a daily walk that exists purely because a dog needs it turns out to be doing quiet, measurable work on their heart health in the background. Fact 82. Children raised in households with a dog from infancy show measurably lower rates of certain allergies and asthma later in life, a pattern researchers attribute to early exposure to a broader range of everyday microbes helping train a developing immune system. Fact 83. Specially trained detection dogs have demonstrated the ability to identify certain disease signatures purely by scent, including some infectious diseases, with accuracy rates in controlled trials that rival or in some cases outpace standard diagnostic tests. And at a fraction of the processing time, and unlike a lab machine, a detection dog can be walked straight into a waiting room and start working immediately. No sample prep, no delay. Fact 84. Search and rescue dogs remain one of the most effective tools available after natural disasters, capable of locating survivors trapped in rubble long after standard detection equipment has failed to pick up any signal, a capability that has saved lives in earthquake response efforts around the world. Block 9. The strange and little known. Fact 85. Dogs eating grass is largely normal behavior, not automatically a sign of illness. Studies tracking this behavior found that only a minority of dogs who ate grass vomited afterward, suggesting most do it simply because they want to, possibly for texture, fiber, or plain preference. Fact 86. Research has documented dogs producing tears in emotionally intense positive moments, such as being reunited with an owner after separation, tied to a surge in bonding hormones rather than distress, meaning in at least some cases, a dog's tears are closer to joy than sorrow. It's a small detail that flips a very old assumption on its head. The moment we'd normally read as heartbreak might actually be one of the purest expressions of relief a dog is capable of showing. Fact 87. Dogs have a third eyelid, a thin protective membrane in the inner corner of the eye that helps shield against debris and spreads tear film evenly. Humans retain only a tiny vestigial fold in the same spot, a small leftover of a feature many other animals still use fully. Fact 88. Researchers have recorded a distinct panting sound dogs make almost exclusively during play, acoustically different from ordinary breathing. When recordings of this sound were played to shelter dogs, it noticeably increased calm, playful behavior, functioning almost like a canine invitation to play. Fact 89. Despite how natural it feels to humans, most dogs show subtle stress signals during hugs, turning their head away, flattening ears, or licking their lips, because restriction of movement reads as mildly threatening to a dog's instincts even when the intention behind it is pure affection. Fact 90. Some researchers believe dogs use the gradual fading of a familiar scent throughout the day as a rough internal clock, which may help explain why a dog often seems to know roughly when its owner is due home, well before any external cue like a car or footsteps arrives. Fact 91. Certain dogs, especially food-motivated and highly food-driven breeds, have been observed teaching themselves to open doors and latches purely through repeated trial and error, then using the skill selectively, often precisely when it benefits them the most. Fact 92. A dog's fear response to thunderstorms is frequently linked to a buildup of static electricity in the air before a storm, not just the sound of thunder itself. That's why some dogs grow anxious well before the first clap is even audible, and why anti-static wraps can noticeably reduce the reaction in some cases. It reframes a behavior a lot of owners find confusing. A dog pacing and panting a full hour before any storm is visible on the horizon isn't overreacting. It's picking up on something real that we simply can't feel ourselves. Fact 93. In experiments offering dogs a choice between working for a treat or simply receiving the same treat for free, many dogs consistently choose to work for it, a pattern researchers call contra-freeloading, suggesting the process of earning something matters to a dog independent of the reward itself. It's part of why puzzle feeders and scent-based enrichment games tend to leave dogs visibly calmer and more satisfied than simply handing them the same amount of food in a bowl. Fact 94. Beyond basic quantity sensitivity, dogs show a documented preference for fairness in cooperative tasks, reacting with visible frustration or disengagement when a partner receives better treatment for the same effort. A finding that places dogs among a very short list of non-primate species showing this kind of social awareness. Fact 95. Controlled studies playing different music genres to shelter dogs found that calmer genres, like soft, classical, or reggae, consistently produced more relaxed behavior, more lying down, less barking, compared to more chaotic or aggressive-sounding genres, suggesting dogs respond to musical structure in ways that go beyond simple volume or noise sensitivity. Which brings us back to where we started, the bond itself, and just how deep it actually runs. Block 10, Dogs and Humans Final Facts. Fact 96. Sustained positive interaction between a dog and its owner measurably shifts hormone levels in both directions at once. More bonding hormone, less stress hormone in both species simultaneously. Researchers have found this mutual effect grows stronger the longer a dog and owner have shared a history together, suggesting the biochemistry of the bond deepens with time rather than staying flat. Fact 97. Dogs appear sensitive to how their owner is treated by others. In behavioral studies, dogs were noticeably less willing to accept food or affection from a stranger who had just been rude to their owner, even while readily accepting the same offer from a neutral stranger moments later. It suggests a dog's loyalty isn't purely self-interested. It extends outward to actively defending, or at least withholding trust on behalf of, the person it's bonded to. Fact 98. Humans instinctively shift into a specific speech pattern when talking to dogs: higher pitch, slower pace, simpler sentence structure, closely mirroring how adults naturally speak to infants. Studies show dogs respond measurably better to this style of speech than to normal adult-directed speech, meaning the instinct exists because it actually works. Fact 99. Cases of dogs recognizing an owner after years of separation are well documented, and the leading explanation ties back to scent. A dog's olfactory memory appears to have an unusually direct line to the brain's emotional centers, meaning a familiar scent can trigger recognition and emotional response almost instantly, without much conscious processing in between. Fact 100. When a dog looks at you, it isn't looking at a source of food or a familiar shape in the room. It's reading your face, your voice, your posture, and your scent all at once, and matching all of it against a memory built specifically around you. It remembers what happened yesterday. It notices when something is different today. It waits for you when you leave, and it responds the instant you come back. Somewhere around 15,000 years ago, a wild animal and a struggling species of primate decided, independently and gradually, that proximity was worth the risk. Neither one fully understood what that decision would become. A working partnership turned into something closer to family, A bond so consistent across cultures and centuries that it stopped looking like coincidence a long time ago. A dog is not simply an animal that lives near humans. It is, in a very real biological sense, a species shaped by us and a species that helped shape who we became in return. Our genes nudged its genes. Its behavior nudged our habits, our schedules, our sense of safety in an unfamiliar place. Whatever comes next for both of us, it's a safe bet we'll keep changing together, the same way we have for 15,000 years. If you have a dog nearby right now, go say hello. It already knows you're thinking about it. If this one hit different, hit subscribe, drop a like, and tell me your dog's name in the comments. Just the name, that's plenty.